Hello everybody, James here, Story Time with Dutch Mantell, episode 50. 50 episodes, Dutch. I know we took a couple of weeks off here and there, so I actually think this is more or less our 1 year anniversary.
Really?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. I mean, normally it'd be 52, but I think we've missed 2 weeks, so this is basically our 1 year anniversary.
I didn't get you a present.
So I just remembered.
I'm sorry I didn't get you a present, so... But anyway, it doesn't seem like it's been a year.
No, how time flies. I was thinking this recently, and ever since COVID happened, time seems to have just sped up. And I don't know if it's just because like everyone was habitually at home more and days ran into each other more, but these last 3 years just seem to have just flown by. And then I can't believe we've been doing this for a year.
I can't either.
I bet it feels like 10 years for you. Hanging about me for a year.
But apparently the people like the show. I don't know what they're used to. And I enjoy doing the show. You enjoy doing the show. And so one guy wrote in and he told me something about the show, this, that, and the other, or whatever. And I said, well, you can quit watching the show at any time and start watching bowling if you want to be entertained more. I would be remiss if we didn't bring this up. Our latest guest on the show, and that's my daughter right behind us there.
She's the latest guest now.
She's in the shot. She's looking at me.
Photobomb.
Hello.
That's she. Beautiful girl. Takes after her father. So our latest guest, Kenny Bolin. Do you have anything to say about him, James?
A lot of people had a lot of things to say about Kenny Bolin. Some positive, some more negative. But saying that, I was saying to you just beforehand, and people can see the numbers on YouTube, for a full episode, the numbers are quite high for a full episode, especially as we record this, like 5 days out? It's done quite well. Mm-hmm. I think is it the controversy that he causes that causes people to tune in, do you think?
Well, Kenny, I've known him for years and years and years. And he was a friend of Jim Cornette's, and then they had a falling out. And we covered that on the show last week. That Kenny, if he could get as much heat on the floor where the fans are as he gets in the dressing room, I mean, he'd sell out everywhere. He's that type of guy who carries nuclear heat, and it's just by what he talks about. I don't care what he talks about. It's going to be controversial. He could say something about a 56 Chevy, but he would say it in such a way you'd get mad at him, kind of, you don't know nothing about cars. And when he talks politics, people want to strangle him. Even the people who agree with him want to strangle him. But he's never at a loss for words, as you could plainly see last week. He was constantly talking over me, and I said, shut the F up, please. And then he did come back and said, yeah, well, maybe I did step on you a little bit. I said, step on me? Hell, you were stomping. But anyway, good guy. And I won't apologize for some of his language, but we did put a warning up because I knew that he's a little potty mouth sometimes. And we did put a warning up. And he even said, yeah, well, I need to watch. I talked to him last night. He said, I do need to watch my language. So we may have done a good thing in his life.
You think he's turning a corner?
Well, he didn't have to turn the corner. He can just slow down and get into the corner. Is because I've always heard that people judge you by the way you speak. And if you got to put in, a bunch of cuss words, I've never really been a fan of that. I mean, I cuss too, but according to who I'm around. Because if I'm around women or kids or whatever, I don't cuss because I respect them enough not to do it, even if I don't even know them. I wouldn't bring myself to say some of say some of the words that that Bolin said. But again, in defense of the show, we did run a warning, and that warning may have gotten people to watch it. If somebody said, if I saw a podcast, oh, this may be offensive to some viewer or whatever, I said, well, damn, I got to watch this now. See what the heck they're going to say.
So is this the right time to announce that Kenny Bolin is now going to be the new permanent co-host?
No, we might need to wait on that. Let me tell you what. If he was the permanent co-host instead of you, well, that would be the end of story time with Dutch.
Who would quit first?
I would. If you said right now he's going to take over, I said, well, I just end it right here, and say no need to go any farther. All right, read me some news and let me comment on it.
Okay, before we get to the news, though, we need to do the plugs. I'm going to do this one first.
Oh, yeah.
If you could do us, if you're watching, we want to get to 100 5-star reviews on iTunes, or just any reviews on iTunes, up to 100 would be nice. We have T-shirts. What's that? Still just the one, but we will be having more soon. You people mean nothing to me. Available, link in the description of this video and every video. And books, of course. Dwayne The Rock Johnson, the People's Champion, What I Wrote. Owen Hart, King of Pranks, What I Wrote. And Dutch has written 2 as well, Tales from a Dirt Road. And, of course, The World. Oh, God, where is it? There it is. And The World, according to Dutch. You can find all 4 of those on Amazon. And Dutch's books are available signed. If you want them signed, email Dirty Dutch Mantell at 2Ls at gmail.com. Now, are we getting into the news, or do we have anything else?
You're the producer. You tell me.
Yeah. Okay.
I will follow. You lead, and I'll follow.
I will lead you then to the news. Then we're going to do fan questions today as well. So we're going to do about half an hour's worth of news, and then whatever time we've got left, we will do fan questions. And of course, they build up far more than we can ask them all. But keep sending them in, and we'll pick out the best. But as far as news goes, the WWE Draft. You watched SmackDown this week?
Yes, I did.
Were you, just overcome with excitement?
I watched it. I watched it last week. No, I wasn't. I've never been a fan of the draft. It sounds great, but I think they need to handle it a different way. I don't know why they would even have a draft, because, see, the draft works in college football to pro football because you have amateurs. And All-American football players going into the pros. Here you have pros just going back and forth. They do it all the time anyway. So to me, it's not a big deal. And I don't see the excitement in it. And actually, I was disappointed in the draft, because I have this other podcast I do for Sportskeeda, and it's called Smack Back, I think. It's the name of it.
Is it Smack Talk?
Yeah, I think it is Smack Talk. I never have gotten the name right. But it's on the Sportskeeda network. And you can find it if you look at Sportskeeda. You can find I have 2 co-hosts there, and they're always correcting me because, those things like details and stuff like that, they kind of escape me. But I think SmackDown had a good flow going, and they took one of the stars away, and that was Rhea Ripley. I didn't like her leaving. And who went to SmackDown?
I'm going to give you the full list. Well, I'm going to give you the full list of round 1 and round 2 drafts. So these are the important people as far as the WWE office is concerned. SmackDown gets Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa with Paul Heyman, Bianca Belair, Street Profits, Edge, Austin Theory, Charlotte Flair, the Usos, and the Latino World Order, which comprises of Rey Mysterio and 4 other people. Do you want me to give you Raw?
That's SmackDown.
That's SmackDown. I'll give you Raw. Cody Rhodes, Becky Lynch, Imperium. That's Gunther, Ludwig Kaiser, and Giovanni Vinci. That's the third one that none of us can ever remember his name. Matt Riddle, Rhea Ripley, Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, and Sami Zayn, and Judgment Day.
Well, I think Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens should have stayed at SmackDown. They should keep their angle intact on SmackDown because it's the same company. They can take it back and forth anyway. So keep their main competitors. To me, this is to me, I would keep them on the same show. Also, SmackDown losing Gunther to Raw. It may be a good thing because now he'll have different opponents. Because I am a huge, huge Gunther fan. And I think that and he may have gone just about as far as he can go on SmackDown at this point. So I'm happy. I'm going to miss him. So let him spread his wings over there on Raw and see what he does there. Because and they are people who watch Raw exclusively, and they are people who watch SmackDown exclusively. And the ones on Raw may not have seen Gunther. So what is Gunther's background? He's from Austria, correct?
He is from Austria, yeah. As far as I know with Gunther Walter, is he resisted going to WWE for years, or at least full-time, because I think he just thought he'd just be too homesick or something. So This last couple of years, now he's on the main roster. He's gotten over that somehow, and he's just decided to go for it, and he seems to be getting rewarded handsomely with the booking so far.
He just got married too.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. He got married to some girl, some lady, I hope. You never can tell these days. But he just got married to somebody. And I think she was on NXT. What do they call the NXT in England?
Nothing anymore. It was NXT UK, and now that's been shut down.
I think that's where he met her. And I think she has quit now. I think she got hurt or something. But they had a clip, and I think some people probably saw it, of Gunther dancing with his bride, which was hilarious, really. But they look very much in love, and I'm happy for him. But I hate to lose him from SmackDown to Raw because. And, you have all these armchair bookers, but I think he will have the world championship one day, probably within the next couple of years, I would think. Mm-hmm. Because his style is, who calls it flippity? Somebody calls it that. I forgot who on WWE roster calls it that flippity style. That's the farthest thing from Gunther's style. Gunther, he'll just beat the living crap out of you. And the people watch it because it is brutal. And at Clash at the Castle, Gunther and Sheamus, they burn it down. Mm-hmm. And the three-way they had on I think the latest pay-per-view, they burned it down too on WrestleMania. It was Drew and Sheamus in a three-way. And I'm not a fan of three-ways, but that was a good one. But I think I didn't like the Gunther. Bianca Belair, I'm a fan of hers too. But I've already kind of had my fill with her because she was on SmackDown. So if I'm looking at the two brands, who I think came out better on top, I think probably SmackDown did. I'm printing something back here. So if you hear that, that's just my printer. That's Vince. That's Vince sending me something.
It's facts.
Yeah, it's a fact. It's the facts with facts on it. And Vince said, "Hey, pal, don't forget to mention this." Okay.
Do you know what I've just realised is Roman Reigns, Solo Sikoa, the Usos, the entire Bloodline's on SmackDown. I've only just realised because I knew Cody Rhodes was on Raw now, but also so's Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. So now that's all of Roman Reigns' feuds that he's been having for the last 7-8 months, pretty much.
Yeah.
Now that's all just bookended. That's the act closed on that, and now Roman Reigns, who's barely ever seen. Or barely ever wrestles, now has to come up with an entirely new batch of feuds.
That's why I don't like it. Because now you got to do a reset. And I hate to be on that creative team. Now they're saying this is over there and this is over here. And isn't Roman in a position where he can go back and forth?
No.
No?
But Brock Lesnar is, apparently.
I don't get it.
No.
Well, again, all I can do is sit back and watch what they're doing and see if I like it. But it's not up to me to be the auditor of the shows. It's up to the fans to see if they like what they're doing. And they pay tremendous attention to a least bit of a drop in the ratings or a movement in the ratings. Because if it drops a tenth of a point, they got to figure out a reason for it. And whether they figure out a reason or not, it's probably not the reason, but they at least address it in the meetings.
I'm going to give you
I'm going to tell you, one of the worst appreciated jobs in the wrestling business is on the creative team, on the writing team. Because and I've said this before, when the territory is up or when the company is up, it's the talent. Oh, it's great. Those guys are. But when it's down, who do the wrestlers blame it on? The bookers, the writers, they're the shits. So when it's up, the writers don't get any credit. When it's down, they take all the blame.
Hey, when you were a booker, what promotion or territory did you feel most valued?
Puerto Rico, because it was all my stuff.
Which one though? IWA or Carlos?
The second one, IWA. Because you know how big the creative team was?
You?
One person. It was me. I would go out on the beach. This is how I booked it. I'd go out on the beach, take me a bottle of Malibu rum, and I'd set it down. And I'd stay there a couple of hours, 3 hours, whatever. And, it's a lot of people don't know this, but Senor Malibu was very, very smart. He had a lot of great ideas on that beach. And I took it back to my little apartment that overlooked the beach. And then I would write down all the things he would tell me. But guess who I had to run it by? Nobody. So nobody could talk me out of it, or nobody could put anything with it. And I went, and for 2 years down there, I did record business. I mean, we'd go to those big shows. I would just bring guys in sometimes just to make it look like a big show. They weren't involved in anything. I'd put them in the third or fourth match. It just looked like a big show. That's called putting a little icing on the cake. And we'd go to those big stadiums, and we do 15, 16, 17,000, whatever of a hole sometimes. And that's the way I booked it down there. But I felt more appreciated there than probably anywhere else, because I got paid pretty well for that. I would get the bonuses and I would get this. And for Puerto Rico, I only worked 3 days a week, 4 days a week. And then I would write the show out and I would give it to my assistant who actually learned how to put video packages together. And when he was learning that, he did some great stuff. And sometimes on the big shows, I would end the show with a big long musical video package. And when I would get to the stadium I'd get there about 5:00. There'd be a line at 5:00 to get in. And that's how I knew it was going to be a good house. If they were lining up 3 hours, 3 hours and a half, and in Puerto Rican time, 8:30 means like 9:17. It can mean anything. They called it Puerto Rican time. So, but I enjoyed it there, and I didn't have to run anything by anybody, which is the way I liked it.
Well, unfortunately, now everybody's got to run everything by Vince again, and it seems that this draft, sorry, we're back on the draft, is sort of indicative of Vince McMahon very much sticking his oar back into creative, because quite a lot of things don't make sense. So I'm going to read you some things. If you want to comment on them, you just interrupt me. Raw Women's Champion Bianca Belair and SmackDown Women's Champion Rhea Ripley to Raw. They're both the champions, and apparently this also happened 2 years ago with Bianca Belair and Charlotte Flair, and they just swapped titles. So, there you go. There's your title runs ended, and now you've just got to start a new one with the opposite belt. That was weird. On NXT yesterday, as we record this, NXT Women's Tag Team Champions Alba Fyre and Isla Dawn wrestled and defeated Katana Chance and Kaden Carter, who are all four are getting called up to the main roster. Yet on their last night, exactly, what's the purpose there?
I have no idea. Well, like I said, I wasn't excited about the draft to begin with. Maybe when they first did it, when they first do the draft, 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
2002. And I'll tell you what the difference
20 years
is.
Ago.
I'll tell you what the difference is back then that they had probably, including Vince, 4 all-time megastars, or maybe with the NWO as well. So you had Austin, Rock, Hogan, Vince McMahon, the NWO, Ric Flair, bunch of Undertaker, Jericho, Kane, a million of them. And you had enough like Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, who, needed some of the stars to filter away, and then, John Cena will come in soon. Edge, Rey Mysterio made his debut a month after the first. You had all these megastars and soon to be superstars as well, that it actually sort of made sense, and it was like the replacement Raw versus Nitro ended up sort of being Raw versus SmackDown. They sort of fostered that tried to foster like a genuine rivalry between the blue and the red team in the writing room, as well as it made sense then. I'm not so much, not sure so much.
I don't think it. No, it doesn't. I don't get it. What was the ratings for SmackDown?
SmackDown was up, Raw was down. So, or this past Raw was down, which I don't think there was a draft. But anyway, it seemed to do okay for a 1 week bump. Let me give you a couple more. Speaking of tag teams, it was threatened that nobody was safe and tag teams could be split up, which also makes no sense, because you could take a tag team as a tag team. So why would you only take one of the tag team when you've got the other one for free? So the jeopardy wasn't really there. Free agents: Omos, Mustafa Ali, Dolph Ziggler, Von Wagner. But they're not free agents. They just can't figure out what brand they want to put them on, so they just didn't even include them in the draft at all.
Nobody wanted them. They'd be taken in the last round as a free agent, but nobody wants them.
Drafting wrestlers in rounds for the most part. This is another point I made. Really exposes the pecking order as far as how important they are in the eyes of the company itself, I think. So, like poor old Shinsuke Nakamura being drafted in the 4th and final round, that really, really plops on him.
I got a lot of heat online because somebody wrote that Dutch Mantell proposes Nakamura to be fired.
Mm-hmm.
Did I cover this last week?
We covered it 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it was
okay.
It's not what you said at all.
But what I'm saying is, I'm a viewer too, and I know what I like, but I like to see different people. You do too. Everybody does. If you keep putting the same ones week after week after week, it becomes so boring that I think this is what I think, why the rating stays up. I think a lot of people go to sleep and they forget to change their TV to anything else. That's why the rating doesn't drop lower than it does sometimes. But Nakamura, okay, let me ask you something.
Go on.
Professional wrestling is not like football. Now, in football, you can sign a guy for 3 years because hoping that maybe the first year he'll get some playing time, but the second year he's improved quite a bit. He understands the system, and you still got him for 2 more years. But in wrestling, it's It's controlled by writers. And I've often said that wrestlers are they're like bananas on a shelf. They got a shelf life. And after so much, the bananas, you just can't eat them anymore. So you got to throw them out. That's what happens to wrestlers because they have a shelf life too. So if you don't do something with them big, like the first year, you can go back the second year and do something, but now they're old. They're like the old recliner in your living room. They're like a part of the furniture. It doesn't excite you anymore. But yet, I don't know why WWE, they have these contracts like that. I guess because they can afford them. But it never really, it makes sense on the performer side. But the writers, when they look at that, they got this guy for 3 years and they're thinking, what are we going to do with this guy for 3 years? But back in the day, we didn't have a time limit. A guy was there till he wasn't anymore.
We didn't have contracts either.
No, it didn't have contracts. So you could do a big angle with him and he'd get pissed off the next week and walk out. Then you've done this big angle and all of a sudden the guy's gone. And that has happened not dozens of times
to you,
but hundreds of times. But keeping a guy alive after their first year, unless he's a top guy, is very hard to do.
I'm going to speed through the rest of this because we've just been talking about this for ages and we're still on the first question. We've got other news and we've got a ton of questions. But I want to sort of bring up briefly, and I'll probably ask you this another episode at some point. So WWE Universal and WWE Champion Roman Reigns still has 2 belts. They've not been, as far as I can tell, unified yet. So therefore, when Raw came out with a 3rd heavyweight belt, that means that there's now 3 heavyweight world championships. And therefore, this 3rd belt on Raw has got to be the bronze place belt because Roman has now got gold and silver. So now you've got all these chumps on Raw fighting for 3rd place while Roman's got the top 2 podium spots, which I find weird. But we'll probably talk about that another day. So I want to talk about belts and stuff at some point. Also, the only other thing...
when they came out with that 3rd belt, nobody's a champion yet and on Raw, right?
Nope.
Okay, so that would probably go to Cody. I would think.
I don't think so. I think a bad guy is going to win it. And then Cody will just start chasing again.
Well, okay. Now you're in my ballpark. Gunther.
There you go.
They could put it on Gunther. That'd be a good one. And I think Gunther versus Roman, I think that may be WrestleMania next year.
Raw and SmackDown. Apparently, you can't break the draft. That's never been done before. Wink. Yep. It's broken every 4 weeks usually with these drafts. Also, there's no battling GMs. So now, I mean, I hate general managers, I hate authority figures because they've just been done to death. But now, essentially, you've got Adam Pearce and Triple H running both shows against themselves, which makes no sense. Anyway, we're going to move on. And I want to talk about AEW's Wembley show capacity and controversy surrounding supposedly how many seats are available. Now, you said on this very show 3 weeks ago that you thought AEW would sell out Wembley Stadium when we thought AEW would be opening up 90,000 seats plus floor seats. So you were very, very optimistic there. When you talked to Kenny Bolin, I didn't re-listen to the clip, but then I think you sort of tempered your expectations and you sort of agreed with Bolin that maybe 40,000 was more likely. So now that we record this, I think yesterday it was announced on Tuesday that they've already sold 35,000 tickets in the pre-sale. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you must be... What do you think of that? That's a fantastic number.
That is a fantastic number. One thing about AEW going to England or to Europe is because you're not just drawing from England or Scotland or the UK. You would draw from all over Europe. Even when I was with TNA, we went to a European tour. Well, it was really a UK tour. But we sold out everywhere we went, or they sold out, and I didn't sell out. They sold out everywhere they went. They got great wrestling fans in the UK. They do. And they're very responsive, fun to work in front of. Actually, just fun to be in the crowd. So if they sold 35,000 seats, hey, if I keep predicting a number, eventually I'll come close to it. So I'm going to say they sold 35 on first day. I'm going to say 60 now. How's that sound?
Sort of brings me to my next point, actually, just before I get amazing numbers, especially considering that not a single match has been announced, which is all the more incredible. And we don't even know if it's going to be a pay-per-view or not, which is quite interesting. But there have been arguments that has still not been established one way or another, because there is a pay-per-view back in the States like the week after. So we don't know what's happening with the London show. But now, there are a couple of arguments back and forth that I've seen with how many seats are actually available in Wembley. So the first picture that we saw, almost half of the seats were blacked out. So Wembley Stadium's got a 90,000 seat capacity. Call it around 50,000 seats looked available in this email that Ticketmaster had sent out. Some people are arguing with this, saying, look at this picture where it's got all the colour-coded seats. You know, there's nothing blacked out. Where they've conveniently cropped out the this is only for illustrative purposes only picture that Ticketmaster has on their website. You can see for yourself. Now, somebody who is claimed to be an ESPN journalist, well, he is an ESPN journalist, I can't even find his name. Where was he? Called Mike Coppinger, who works for ESPN, replied on Twitter. So the Wrestling Observer's post saying about the fantastic numbers of the sale. He says, here in Wembley is scaled for only 40,000 for AEW. Far cry from last April when I was ringside for Tyson Fury, Dillian White. And it was packed to the brim with 94,000. Nothing beats the big fight feel at Wembley. So I don't know why he's just sort of made something up out of his bottom. He's pulled that number out. And then just shit on AEW for what's a great number. And then Tony Khan replied, lies, what a load of crap. Tell your agent, Nick Khan, to shove it up his ass. So, ESPN and trying to rain on their parade.
Yeah. I think Tony gets a little bit overexcited sometimes. He sold 35,000 seats or tickets. But, what bothers me about that is a lot of these ticket brokers, they will buy up all these seats.
Mm. And
then all of a sudden, when it looks like it may do better than they think, they will let those seats go, but at a profit. Hey, did you hear? I don't know. You don't know anything about country music, but they have this country music singer in the United States named Morgan Wallen. You ever heard about him?
Never heard of him.
Well, apparently he's very, very hot because he went to, and he's making a tour now down south right now, but he's going to football stadiums. And he went to Oxford, Mississippi, which, believe me, other than the McDonald's and the Walmart, there's nothing in Oxford, Mississippi, but it seats about 60,000 and he sold it out. So the tickets, say a ticket is $100, but when it's sold out, that ticket went to $500. And the ticket brokers were selling tickets at $500 that they had bought for $100. But then to add insult to injury, they went through all the preliminaries, all the bands that were underneath, and 2 minutes before Wallen was going to go on at Oxford, Mississippi, they put a big sign up on one of their big boards there. It's about 100 feet high, and says he won't be able to sing tonight. The concert is canceled, and you can get your money back at the point of purchase. 2 minutes before he was going to go on. So then you had 60,000 people leaving that stadium, madder than hell. And so if you think about the brokers, they bought it for $100, right?
Mm-hmm.
They got $500 for it, but they're not going to give $500 back to the people that bought it, but they're going to get their $100 back. So they hit a double whammy on that. That has nothing to do with wrestling, but I don't think wrestling's ever had a cancellation like that.
No, UFC's had a couple of cancellations like that where they've just like scrapped the pay-per-view entirely.
Yeah, but they scrapped the pay-per-view before it started.
Before it started, yeah, but I mean only like sometimes like a few days beforehand. I've never heard that where they'd only pay you back like face value for a $500 ticket. I've never heard that before. I know obviously a lot of ticket touts will buy up immediately if they think it's going to be a hot show. You know, they will speculate to accumulate. Still though, 35,000 is a huge amount of tickets. There's something I want to bring up as well, actually, and I asked someone because I know somebody. I asked him and said, "What do you want me to refer you as?" And he said, "Industry Insider." So anyway, I know someone who is in Ticketmaster, and I asked, "Have a look. Can you find out how many seats are actually available?" And he said, "We looked in. We can't find it out. The promoter's not letting Ticketmaster know." But we figured out that basically from the floor seats and the seats available on the original chart, it's about around 55,000 that are going to be made available. So I said, was it just going to be that number then? And he said no. When he was dealing with this kind of department, gigs, all these kind of events where they're grayed off and then they sell all the tickets that are available, they will daily release more tickets. And that was part of their job, is to constantly filter out more and more tickets to make sure they sell as many as possible. They won't just gray them out and, you know, gray out on the map and just say, well, it's 55,000, it's seats for 55,000. If they can sell 60, they will. If they can sell 70, they will. And they'll say it's a sellout, you know, up to that point as well.
Well, if you block off seats, say, oh, this is all the tickets we have to sell, even though it's a third of the stadium, and you sell those, that's considered a sellout, I guess. I mean, you don't sell every seat in the building, in the stadium, but you could sell out what you have to sell and call it a sellout. I don't know. It's very misleading, I think.
Definitely.
But Tony getting upset about that, I will say that he is hands-on and even hands-on in the social media department. So, and I hope they do good. I hope they do great. But no match has been announced, and CM Punk is supposed to be on that show. Did you hear that CM Punk went inside? Where was it?
Impact.
Right. I was going to call it IW Impact and played a game of cards or whatever he played.
He played Uno. Reverse flip.
Yeah. Well, that tells me something that they're going to work together, which is fine.
I don't know. I think he just knows he's bulletproof now, so he's just going to every single wrestling show and being really public about it.
Well, I kind of like that. You know, all these companies fighting each other, who cares? Work together, do some cross promotion, and because it's easier to do that than sit back on social media and take shots at each other. That don't make anybody any money.
We will do two more bits of news, then we will go on to the fan questions. Britt Baker T-shirt controversy. Have you seen this T-shirt?
I have.
Yeah. I actually wrote this down. Some sorry dribbling, window licking, no mark imbecile challenged Britt Baker's T-shirt where she was like covered in blood or had a black eye. I can't remember which one he challenged. Saying
black eye.
Yeah, black eye. Yeah, saying this is textbook domestic abuse and you're glorifying it, and it's like, what kind of like clown are you? Like it's a storyline. It's a storyline that was on TV to explain why the T-shirt was made, and the second T-shirt was made, and it's got nothing to do with domestic violence at all. You're just projecting, probably because he's a little wife beater as well, if he could ever get laid in his life.
Oh, that is too much.
I hate Twitter.
I cannot believe you would associate that man with that. No, it's an angle. It's an angle. And it takes on a life of its own when the performers or the wrestlers themselves start talking about it. And I don't know how it glorifies domestic violence. It's because I've seen other domestic violence signs and the woman is there with a black eye or a swollen eye or something. So these people are going to make. I do think people sit back and say, I don't like that, so I'm going to vent my frustration so everybody can agree with me. But I don't think anybody agrees with that. And if they made a T-shirt out of it, they made a T-shirt out of it. Guess what you have the right to do? Don't buy the T-shirt. If you don't agree with it, don't buy it. But no, I don't agree with that. It glorifies domestic violence. I think it does the exact opposite, because a woman with a black eye is not pretty. I mean, you don't want to see that. So how it glorifies domestic violence, I have no idea. So it has to be explained to me, but I don't care how you explain it. I still won't agree with it.
Maybe if she was given a big thumbs up and under the picture it says, "I love domestic violence," then I could see how it's glorifying domestic violence. But no.
Yes, if she says, "I love this shit. I love to get the crap beat out of me every chance I get." Now that's glorifying it. But otherwise, I don't see it. I mean, there's a lot of things. It's just not in wrestling. It's in everything. Because you'll have some people support it and some people don't. I don't think most people support that it glorifies domestic violence. Even if they didn't know anything about wrestling or the show, I don't think. Sometimes a picture just makes the statement itself. And I've seen the picture, and she's there. She's looking sad. Her eyes darkened black. But it makes you wonder what happened to her. Mm-hmm. And she's a woman, quite naturally, and you're assuming, without even knowing any of the facts at all, that some big, overbearing man, did this to her, and that's the result of it. I think it does exactly the opposite. I think it deglorifies it. It's not a laughing matter. It's really not.
Absolutely not. And
that domestic violence actually goes both ways. You never hear about a guy getting the crap beat out of him by his old lady, but there's been a lot of cases like that.
With that being said, I would not wear that T-shirt down the pub. I feel like that would require a lot of explanation that I'm not willing to give.
Why wouldn't you wear it to the pub?
Because a lot of people are saying, "How come you're wearing a T-shirt with a girl with a black eye on it?" And I'd be like, "Well, now there was this thing that happened on a wrestling. No, bear with me.
Yeah. Okay, I got it."
Right, I'm going to move on then. Sonya DeVille's stalker has been jailed. I can't believe this was a few years ago as well. Talk about time going by. This is from Fox 13 News. Prosecutors say Philip Thomas drove from South Carolina to Tampa Bay area with a knife, zip ties, and duct tape. They said he planned to kidnap WWE wrestler Sonya Deville, and he almost pulled it off. Months before, he bombarded her with threatening text messages on social media, and later those threats extended to her family and friends. DeVille said she ignored it for the most part until he followed through on those threats. Thomas pled guilty to several charges, including attempted kidnapping, aggravated stalking, armed burglary. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison, followed by 15 years of probation, so a good, proper sentence there. Prosecutors said his obsession grew into anger and later into a plot to kidnap DeVille. They said in August 2020, Thomas broke into the home of the wrestling star. Home surveillance cameras showed DeVille checking the sliding door after an alarm system was triggered. In the video, you see her spot Thomas and run away moments later. A chilling sight as Thomas walked into a house looking for DeVille shortly after Thomas was arrested. Now, do you remember this at the time? Have you seen the... Because I actually watched the security video this morning while writing that. It's very chilling.
Well, I don't know Sonya Deville.
You're thinking of Sonjay. Sonjay Dutt there almost, aren't you? With the name?
Sonjay Dutt. How do you say her name?
Sonya.
Sonya. I don't know her. But I do, I can say that what a chilling, like you called it chilling, video that would be, because if he'd have got in that house, he's got some serious issues. And I'm glad they put him in prison. I don't think maybe if he got 14 years,
No, 15.
This is in
full 15.
This is in Florida. I hope he serves 10 because that's what he needs. Because, and I have gotten into arguments about this, about people have a perverted sense, not a perverted, but rehabilitation versus punishment. I don't think it's that. I think we need to take this guy off the street because he's a threat to everybody else. So let the prison be a deterrent from him getting out and doing it again. Now, why he did this, he has to have some serious mental issues. So being in prison means one thing, that he can't do it to anybody else. And if DeVille had kids in there or other people, who knows how bad it could have been. He could have went in there. He could have killed people. He could have killed her. But, and I think it's a proper sentence. Like, as you said, I think he may have needed a little bit more. But that's where I kind of disagree with the court system. I mean, they're not consistent. He got 14 years for that. Nobody got hurt, but yet somebody driving drunk down the road kills somebody, they get 3 years. But the guy's dead. They may not have meant to do it, but still. But anyway, that's talking to judicial system, and I'm not a judge, and you aren't either. So that's a story. That's a topic for another day.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I'll tell you this very quick story. When I was studying for a law degree, which I didn't complete, in my first year, they gave us an example of a car crash that happened actually just down the road from where I live. And it was a national news story. Essentially, a guy who was, I think, proved to be speeding and proved to be distracted by his phone was driving a Ferrari and crashed head-on with another car, and one of the two occupants was killed. He got probation. It was proof that he was distracted. It's like vehicular manslaughter has such a low... you rarely seem to get jail time, or if you do, it's only 2, 3, 4 years.
He got probation after looking at his phone, and he didn't. One thing you say, he didn't mean to do it, but yet still, you got to pay attention. He should have got some prison time.
Yeah, he got nothing. I want to bring up something else as well. Now, this brings to mind this case with Sonya DeVille, another high-profile obsessive WWE fan case in 2015 where some other sad sack called Alejandro Montalvo was constantly haranguing performers outside and staff and everybody else outside the WWE NXT Performance Center, including taking a big old dumpski outside. I can't remember because I couldn't find the details of it, but I seem to remember at the time he may have been smearing it all over the windows as well.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, afterwards, when he was shot in the chest, he claimed that he felt like his dreams were coming true. So you can tell what sort of, I don't know, I mean...
So what happened to him?
Well, I believe he got arrested, and then he kept on doing it, and then eventually he wrote a letter to WWE Legal in 2020 saying that he wouldn't go there anymore, which he didn't, apparently, as far as we can tell. But that leads me to my next question is, you've been a regional, national, and international well-known figure over the course of your career. Have you ever had any fans, nothing like this, I'm sure, but like stalk you or pester you or just keep following you around or make you uncomfortable, anything like that?
I have. They didn't really make me that uncomfortable, but they would always be at certain places. What makes me uncomfortable is when you don't know they're there. Then they're... See, I think a lot of wrestlers and performers, they have the same problems because people stalk them. And they come around where they're staying and in their hotel rooms and leave notes on their cars or their vehicles and show up in the oddest places, like if they go into eat in a restaurant and you look over there, there's a person standing in the corner. I've had it happen to me, but so I had it happen to me one time, so I just shot the guy.
Did you make his dreams come true?
Yeah. And I said, here. But I shot him in the knee. I didn't shoot him to really hurt him. I just shot him in the knee. And I says, maybe you've learned your lesson. And so I did like my own self, I just judged him and sentenced him and penalized him all at the same time.
Yeah. You probably did make it.
But I shot him with like a little 22. It's like an accelerated BB gun, but he got the point.
Yeah. I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. All right, well, after that, let's go on to some fan questions now. So, if you want to email in your questions, you go to questionsfordutch@gmail.com. That's the only place you can send in questions and have a hope of actually having them answered. So, saying that, here is the first question. Somehow it relates to Bolin, of course, it must do. Killer Carl, but he's spelt Carl with a C here, so it's probably not Killer Carl Cox. We never heard your opinion of what you thought of the Young Bucks in AEW. Do you agree with Kenny Bolin's assessment that they simply don't pass the believability test as far as size and appearance? Or does it not matter to you as long as the fans are responding? It didn't seem to hamper Ricky Morton's career.
No. Okay, if I'm a promoter and I put two guys out there, they could weigh 160 pounds, look like shit, I don't care. But if the people bought tickets to see these guys, they'd be in the main event every week. Now, granted, the Bucks aren't physical specimens; they're not weightlifters, but they do innovative stuff. If you like that kind of wrestling, that's the type of wrestling for you. To me, I don't think if you just judge them on just their appearance and their size. I'll ask you, James, if you put the Young Bucks in WWE, and I ask everybody listening, where do you see the Young Bucks fitting in WWE? Or if they even fit in? Yay or nay?
I think anyone can fit in. I'm sure that, they're talented enough, and I think it takes all shapes and sizes to make an interesting roster. But do you see them as the top tag team in WWE, Dutch, if they did go?
No. Oh, they could go. They could go. One thing I would insist, if I booked the Young Bucks, cut your hair shorter or something. They look like 1991 or whatever. They look so dated with that hair. And I used to have hair like that. And somebody said, cut your hair, do something. So I finally cut my hair, and it actually feels better. You actually look better. And the Young Bucks aren't big guys, but they do some really good stuff. And they're like 40 years old. How old are those guys, you think?
I'm glad you asked that, because I just Googled it. Matthew is 38, and the younger one's 33. Nick is 33.
Okay. Oh, they're not real. They still got 10 years together. But
you might have to change the names, though, when one of them's 48 and they're still the Young Bucks. Middle-aged Bucks.
The middle age or that'd be a good name for them. Yeah, just the middle-aged Bucks. But knowing them, they do. What I do like about the Young Bucks, they do these little clips, and they're like tongue-in-cheek clips, and they're good. I like it, but the only thing I got against the Bucks, they're super kick crazy. If you sit back in a match, a 20-minute match, I bet you got 20, 30 super kicks in that match somewhere. And they do the double kicks. And if a super kick meant anything before they went in there, after you see so many, it's just like an arm drag now. It means nothing. But they are very creative in some of the stuff they put together. If you watch wrestling for that, if you watch it for the moves, I've always felt that wrestling works better with a story, but not every match can have a story. So they've made up for that by being creative. And I can't say anything about their work. The work's good. They're just not very big, and And if they walked into a 7-Eleven somewhere and you didn't know who they were, and somebody said, "Oh, there's 2 professional wrestlers over there." Where? Those 2 guys? No, they're not. Oh, yeah, they are.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, because it's the Vince McMahon airport test. How much of a believer are you in? Do you know the airport test, where if you're in the airport and you see someone over the way and you look at them and you sort of instinctively know that they're somebody, that they're a star, or they're on TV? Are you a big proponent of that, or not so much?
Well, Vince is of the persuasion of that you have to look like a star. And it's not only wrestlers, but if you see a big bodybuilder go through there and he's got arms like this, well, he's somebody. You just don't know maybe who. And he used to like big guys, which is fine. But that's fine for just a visual conception. If you see somebody like that. But if you see them in the arena, sometimes size is misleading. Who is, I can't even remember his name now. He's in AEW now, and he was the world champion at one time. What's his name?
Hangman Page?
He wanted, no.
John Moxley?
Not
Kenny
Moxley.
Omega?
Well, take Omega. He's not a big guy.
I was going to say Adam Cole next.
Bryan Danielson.
Yeah.
But look at him, because he's he's got a style completely different from the Young Bucks, because he makes you believe his stuff. The Young Bucks are go. I don't think they even know the word sell. They don't. Because a sell to them is 5 seconds. Up, got to be doing something else. Bryan Danielson tells the story during his match, and if he hurts his leg, 5 minutes later, he will do a callback on that leg to remind you that it's still hurt. I don't know why they don't teach guys more that if they hurt their leg, say in 10 minutes into the match, wouldn't it still be hurting at 15 minutes?
I don't know why that's 20? Just not instinctive. Why would you even have to tell someone that? I've never understood why so few people. Because we don't have Rhodes Scholars trying to be wrestlers. But the old timers would tell you, hey, remember your leg is hurt. And actually, it's a good point if you can remember that, because then you can try to do something and then your leg gives out. And now the people know where it comes from. You heard it 10 minutes ago or 5 minutes ago. I want to.
But trying to teach that is a course unto itself. And like you said, it should be instinctive, but believe me, it's not. Because a lot of guys will get hurt and all of a sudden they're up like Superman, like nothing else, like the match just first started. And I do hate that, but hey, I'm one guy. I can't set the rules for everybody, or even set a standard. It is what it is. So, but Bryan Danielson is good at that, and much better than the Bucks. Because I think if the Bucks actually sold sympathetically, they could have those people on the edge of their seats, because they have a connection to those fans. Say they were some big dastardly heels, and these heels, they kind of knew how to get vicious. When he made that tag, we call it the hot tag. When he made the hot tag, they'd be up for it. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Let's say I would, if I could sit down with the Bucks and kind of relay this theory to them, they may look at me and say, "Shut the F up. We don't need to listen to you." And they don't. They really don't. But I think if they tried it, they might even be surprised themselves at the reaction they get.
Do you think they'd be too self-conscious? Do you know what I mean?
Self-conscious?
Yeah, because it
of
takes
their size.
No, not that. I think it's because it takes a certain amount of confidence to go out there and portray yourself like that. You know, I don't know where I heard this from before. I think Raven said this, and he always said he never quite got Chris Benoit as like the all-time greatest wrestler because he goes so quick all the time, and he always said that he sort of considered Chris as someone who was a bit self-conscious of his own performance. He never wanted to let the match breathe ever. You know what I mean? He just wants to get to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And maybe that's something that some of these wrestlers, maybe they're a bit self-conscious that they don't want to, you know, really show too much emotion. I don't know.
Okay, years ago, say I'm wrestling you, James, and we're not in the same dressing room. So we can't go over anything. We can't work anything out in advance. So we just go in the ring. Sometimes some of my best matches, well, not best, but some really, really good matches went on when I didn't pre-plan stuff. The old saying is, we're calling in the ring. You don't hear that now. You don't have one guy saying, we're calling in the ring. You may still have it, but it's guys who've worked together 100 times. But we used to have to go in there because we'd have to we had separate dressing rooms. So you went into the ring and you worked 10 minutes, 15 minutes without discussing anything. But in that, you settle down. And then you told a story. You listened to the people. You read the room. And if you read the room and you feel the room, you can feel it rumble. They'll tell you when the time for the tag. You just know instinctively if you listen to it. And that's the way it's done. Nowadays, the guys take a 15-minute match, and it takes them 2 hours to go over it because some of those moves are very, very not nuanced, but they're intricate because some of the things they go through. And I appreciate that art. And I think the AEW fan is more educated like that than, say, a WWE fan. But I've noticed in the last, 8 months, 9 months, or 10 months since Triple H has been there, they have kind of cut down on those long spots, continuing spots, and they chop it up more, which actually makes for a better match for me. I mean, I'm just speaking for me. I can't speak for everybody because that's what makes it. That's why you have the high flyers. That's why you have the big, strong men and guys with gimmicks, and because you have to reach everybody. And if you can do that, then you have a good show. Just because I don't agree with some of it doesn't mean it's not good.
I just want to bring this up quickly. I went to I've never been to one before. It's not really my bag, but I thought I'd go because it was in Manchester. It was like a wrestling convention. You know, they have the tables up in the sign, signs and photos and cues and stuff like that. And there was quite a few big names like Booker T and Big Show was there and Kevin Nash. One person, I went on the Sunday. I think it was busier on the Saturday, but I went on the Sunday. There was one person who had a line so long it snaked around, and practically everybody else had no line or maybe a couple of people. Daniel Bryan yep. Danielson. And do you know why? Apart from the fact that, people believe in him, and also I think he's the most accessible person. Because, I'm not the kind of person to introduce myself to people. I don't like doing it. I did it to Dallas Page because I've interviewed him a couple of times. And that was it. But you look at him, he's not intimidating. He's super friendly. He is one of you. And that's how he hooks you in. And it's genuine.
Even when he does his interviews, you feel like he's the guy next door. And you feel like you could go up and talk to him. See, Hulk Hogan didn't have that same aura about him. He had that, he was big and And a lot of people were intimidated by it to even say hello to him. But with Daniel, you don't have that. And I think that does lend itself to the general audience, especially when he's wrestling. Because I think he's every man in the audience. And the ladies out there, he's a good-looking guy. They like him. But he struggles, and he has to overcome a lack of size. So he's got a lot of things working for him. He does a good, believable interview. And like you say, he's accessible. I think people aren't afraid to go up and say hello or ask for an autograph. And so, and he's a good guy backstage too. I've always got along with him. Good guy.
Yeah, I also made mention, the only people who had like some substantial queue of any type was FTR. I couldn't believe how small Dax Harwood was. He walked straight past me. I didn't recognise who he was.
Who's this?
One of the FTR guys, the bald guy with the mustache, FTR. Yeah, Dax Harwood. And
you know who he looks like to me?
Go on.
This is a guy years and years and years ago. He was a political figure with Richard Nixon, G. Gordon Liddy.
Let me Google him. I've heard the name.
And he was part of that Watergate stuff and all that kind of crap.
He does, yeah.
Doesn't he look like him?
Yeah. Is it? Yeah, he's got the sort of Dr. Phil kind of looking thing as well, hasn't he?
Can you show the picture?
No. I'll put it up later. Listen,
Okay.
That took us quite a number of minutes to get through the first question. We've got 2 more pages of questions, so we best speed through these a bit more.
Okay, let's speed through it.
Well, no,
okay.
we'll just ask as many as we can. Bill Fizor, Niagara Falls, Canada. Dear Mr. Mantell, I was wondering if you could discuss the career and your interactions with Traci Brooks in TNA. Do you think she should have been Knockouts champion? Do you think she could have had a successful run in the WWE? Thank you very much for your time, hard work, and considerations.
You know, I found out something about Traci Brooks I did not know when she was, till much, say a year after I met her. Her left arm, or her right arm, is handicapped. She can't lift one of her arms higher than this. I didn't even know that. So, do I think she could have been Knockout champion? She could have been, I guess, because if she worked to get that far with, is that 2.5? That's an arm and a half? An arm and a half, you know. But she'd learned to overcome that. So I had a lot of respect for her. Good girl, and she was limited in her moveset, as they say, her moveset. That's a Meltzer term. But there were certain moves she couldn't do because of her arm. But it didn't bother her. She just learned another way to do it and kept going. So
what was
the question?
No, that was more or less it. I'm interested in this now. So what? She had like limited mobility, or she had limited feeling or movement?
Yeah. Okay, this arm can go up like that. Right. This arm can only go to here.
Oh, so maybe she had like frozen shoulder or something then, or we'd have to ask her.
Yeah, well, and I didn't know that till about, I don't know, I'd known her probably a year before she says that she had that. I says, I never heard of that before. She said, yeah, where have you been? So I've been here. I just hadn't been paying attention, I guess. I don't know. But she never told anybody. And when I watched her work, I couldn't even tell.
You gave an example then before. Well, you didn't give an example. I'm going to ask you for an example of a move that she couldn't do, that she found another way to do it. Do you remember any examples?
Well, I don't have any examples now, but say she went to, if she was right-handed, I'm sure she threw her punches left-handed. So that's why I'm saying it was on her left arm, I think. But the left arm, let me think this. In American wrestling, you do everything from the left side. Everything. But in Mexico, it don't matter. I think even in Japan, it doesn't matter. So you can tell, I mean, if you get a guy's arm and you got his right arm knocked out like this, well, the first thing the guy's going to do, because he's not trained that way, he's going to put you on his left arm somehow. That's how you can tell how much experience some guys have. But I can't give you an example of what she could do right offhand. If I think about it, I'll come up with something. Well, but right now I can't.
Well, she was always one of my favourites. I don't remember what she did wrestling, but she was always one of my favourites. Next one, Dion Smith. Hello, Dutch and James. My question is, whom does Dutch feel was the better masked wrestler? The masked superstar or the spoiler? I always enjoyed masked superstar both as a babyface and as a heel. His promos were much different than others, always very calm and well-spoken. The spoiler was impressive, using the top rope, seemingly serving as the inspiration for things The Undertaker would do. Really enjoy the show, and Dutch's memories and reflections. So, spoiler or superstar, who do you hang your hat on?
Okay, who asked this question?
Dion Smith.
Dion, I'm going to refer to you directly. It kind of tells me how old he is, because to remember the spoiler, you're going back a long time ago. The spoiler, whose real name was Don Jardine, could walk that top rope, which in those days was like unheard of. And he was a big, tall guy. He was about 6'6", big guy, and very talented. But back in those days, they didn't do spot after spot after spot. He would just go in and he'd work a big man style. Now, the masked superstar, he was much more athletic, former football player. He was a former a Mongol.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he played at the University of West Virginia, I think, because I was with him in Georgia. And very intelligent guy. And you see him, I still see him on social media.
I saw him on the weekend. Bill Eadie.
Yeah, good guy. What's his real name?
Bill Eadie.
Bill Eadie. Good guy.
Mm.
So they were in different eras, but I'm going to have to say the superstar, I think, is probably the better of the two. And I like his interviews too, because he probably was influenced by the Assassins, who did interviews that way. The Assassins were two masked men who were probably two of the most successful masked men years ago. And they did interviews like that, low key and serious. And when you looked at them, when somebody didn't raise his voice and talks like that, it makes them seem more dangerous. And they were really, really good talkers. So, but I'm going to go with the masked superstar on that one.
Who was the bigger draw, would you know?
Well, it was a different era. I think the superstar, yeah, they were probably 10, 15 years apart, maybe their prime. But I think the superstar did well, but he didn't stay the masked superstar. He only had that for like a year or a couple of years anyway. And then I think he went to he teamed up with, what was the team he was with in WWF?
Demolition.
He teamed up with there, and he dropped the superstar stuff.
I think he was superstar for quite a fair while. I know he was in Japan as the superstar as well, but I want to bring up this as well. So at the same convention, me and my friend were there chatting, and then both Demolition turn up.
Did anybody say anything about me?
Not that. Yes, let's say. If you've got no follow-up questions, yes. So we were stood next to both Demolition acts and Smash, and then there was a third guy. And my friend Chris comes up to me and says, were the three members of Demolition? Because there's a third guy there with face paint. It's like, oh, that's the first thing he said was, no way, these three guys have turned up in face paint. Like, these old fellas have turned up in face paint for the convention. I was like, that's Demolition. I was like, no way. I didn't know there were three of them. One of them's the Warlord. Oh. And then we just sort of meandered. So I was like, oh, big fan of 80s wrestling then, are you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, so Warlord was a part of them at one time or no?
No, he was just stood next to them also with face paint. My friend just assumed that they were fans who turned up in face paint in their 60s.
Okay.
Yeah. Right, we'll move on. Milton, hi guys, love the podcast and YouTube clips. What's your memories of Wahoo McDaniel as a wrestler / athlete and outside the ring as well? Thank you.
Wahoo McDaniel was one crazy MFer. I mean, he was and funny, hilarious. And he used to make joke about the Indians in the dressing room, but he made it a joke, but he was actually telling the truth, which really, if you think about it, it wasn't funny. He said, well, maybe he can lose his land like the rest of us Indians did. Ha, ha, ha. And he laughed just to go on. But Wahoo was, he was a college football player. I think he played a little pro. And he was really, really good. And he knew timing. He knew when to make his dance. He knew when to make his comeback. And when he made his comeback, that building was rocking. And he would wear those big, impressive Indian headdresses. And where I first started hearing about him was when he had the series of matches with Flair, my friend Ric Flair. And they set records at the time. I mean, sellouts and they would beat the crap out of each other. Or Wahoo would beat the crap out of Flair. Flair would try to beat the hell out of Wahoo, but he couldn't do it. But I've heard, I've never been there when they had a match. Johnny Valentine and Wahoo McDaniel, they had a series, and that's where I say that Gunther is probably the second coming of a guy named Johnny Valentine. Johnny Valentine and Wahoo, when they would go into the ring, they wouldn't go in there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. They would go in there and they would put on a clinic for anywhere from 45 to 50 minutes every night and literally beat the crap out of each other. They would come out and their chest would just be almost blood red. Wahoo's come out there, and Valentine too, and they were actually bleeding from the chest, from the chops. But the people that sat back, and Valentine has said that, he says, I can't convince people that wrestling is real, but I damn sure can convince them I am. And he did. Because when you're sitting 5 rows back at a show, and let's say you're not a wrestling fan. Say you had a friend drag you over there, and you said, I don't want to go. I won't go. Then you see Valentine and you see Wahoo. I mean, literally roasting each other. And you hear that. You can hear it to the top seats. You know, something's really, they're really throwing down with some heavy stuff. So, and Valentine he didn't have much of a personality. He was very serious all the time. Let me tell you this quick story.
Yeah.
Johnny Valentine was a ribber. And one night, it was in the Ohio territory, and I think it was Akron or some of those towns like that. And they had this guy called the Alaskan who was Jay York, but he had asthma. So when he came back from his match, you know, he'd be wheezing. So he'd have to take his bottle and he'd have to inhale the medicine. So one night, Johnny thought it would be funny to put lighter fluid in his inhaler. But you can imagine the problem that caused. He came back, he's wheezing, and then he took it, and then he inhaled lighter fluid. Seriously, it's a damn wonder he didn't die or go to the hospital. So he got through that. Took him a while. He got through it, and guys helped him. But Valentine thought it was funny. So the guy didn't come the next day, and he didn't come the next day or the next day. But when he came back, he walked into the dressing room. This is a true story. Johnny Valentine's bag was sitting in the middle of the floor, and he had a shotgun. He pulled a shotgun out, and he just shot into the Valentine's bag. Oh. Then he looked at Valentine. He says, next time, that'll be you. So, needless to say, that was the last time Johnny Valentine ever messed with the Alaskan. Because he was really a heavy ribber. That's just one of them. If I thought I could have some more, but Johnny Valentine, and I heard that one time, I don't know how long ago I heard this, but I always heard that Valentine, he did some serious ribs on guys. Mm. But that was the last time he ever messed around with the Alaskan guy.
I bet it's the last time he left his inhaler in the locker room as well. He probably put it in his pocket or something.
Well, he probably just took his inhaler out and said, you see this, Johnny? And put it right there. He said, it better be the same way when I come back. Because he'd already told him. And if somebody did that to me, or if I did it to somebody, well, I wouldn't do it to anybody like that anyway. But if somebody looked at me after they blew my bag out of the floor and says, it better be that way when I come back, hell, I'd be a guard for that thing. If anybody even looked at it, don't even look at it. Don't touch it, because you're going to think it's me, and you're going to kill me. So, but that's a story that I don't think anybody knows or have ever heard. Now, whether it's true, but I think it is.
The first thing I think you would have done.
But I've often learned never let facts and stuff get in the way of a good story.
You would have moved that inhaler. I mean, if it was those two and you were the third party just watching, the second, you surely would have just moved it and thrown it across the room or something, or stood on it.
What I'd do when Jay come back to the dressing room, I'd go, say, heads up, he done something. Oh, I'd do something.
Next, Jimmy from Oklahoma. I've always been a fan of Mike Rotunda and Bob Holly, two underrated guys in my opinion. Do you have any stories you could share on Holly from SMW or WWF, or Rotunda from Florida? So we'll talk about Holly first. Wasn't he Hollywood Bob Holly in Smoky Mountain at one point?
Bob Holly I think he's from Alabama.
Mm-hmm. Mobile, is it?
Yeah, and you can tell he's from Alabama when you talk to him for like 10 seconds, you can tell, but he's from somewhere way down south. Good worker. And I remember when he first started, I forgot where they gave him an interview for 3 minutes. A 3-minute interview doesn't sound long, but it is long when the commentator is not giving you any help. So, and I think I still got it somewhere. He's doing this interview, and the announcer asks him a question, and then it's got like a 15-second answer, no more than 20. And then the guy was in front of the camera going, go on, go on. Then he starts talking again. To watch him pull out 3 minutes, he was struggling falling all over himself, and he's wanting to punch the announcer for not helping him. I'm going to see if I can find this, and I'm going to give it to you. But not only Bob, anybody that doesn't have anything, and he didn't have anything to talk about, just said, well, what do you think about your chances here? And I think he was in Continental, or, they used to have a territory down in Mobile and Pensacola. And I think he was there. And I got to look that up. But I'll send it to you, and we'll play it back on the show.
Yeah, you should do, definitely. With so this wasn't in Smoky Mountain, because that would have been you interviewing him most likely.
Well, I would have helped him, because if you see a guy struggling, you got to jump in, because your interview is just dying right in front of you. And yeah, it wasn't called Southeastern then. It's called something else. But I would have helped him if I was doing the interview.
You wouldn't have figuratively put butane in his inhaler.
Oh no, I would not. Because but Bob Holly, he's a kick-ass son of a bitch. He really is. Because when you mess with him, he's going to, if you just in a working fashion, he will go back in the ring with you the next day, or whenever he gets you in the ring. And he'll let you know that he hasn't forgotten it, because he's a tough guy. He really is. And if somebody messes with him, and I don't know if he'd had asthma and he went back in there, he may not have shot the bag. He may have shot Valentine. So I don't know. But I always like Bob, but he's a tough guy. He really is.
Well, I was going to ask, actually, because obviously as fans and, news wrestling websites and everything, they just proliferated more in the early 2000s onwards, and we all knew that Bob was a rough, tough, gruff kind of person and a bit of a Grinch. But did he have that reputation in Smoky, or even in the WWF in the mid-90s when you were there? Because he was, at least in the WWF, he was just an undercard guy, probably happy to have a job and not wanting to rock the boat. I don't know.
Well, the reputation of what? Just being rough and tough? And
happy to give you a receipt back. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was like that. And if it got back to the dressing room, if you didn't like it, well, let's go. That's the way he was. Because he'd fight you. I would like to, you've heard stories about David Schultz, right?
Oh, yeah.
I would hate to have seen, or not hate, I would love to have seen Bob Holly and David Schultz as tag team partners. And because both of them did not give a flip. And David Schultz, I was tag team partners with him. I was in a ring with him one night in Louisville, and David he's a hothead, but he can back it up. One guy was drunk in the crowd in Louisville, Kentucky one night. Me and David, we stepped into the ring. We had the belts, but on these belts was an eagle. And the eagle kind of came out of the belt about this high. The head, I can't describe it. And we were wrestling Bill Dundee and Rocky Johnson. Well, this drunk guy tried to get in the ring, and the referee didn't stop him. And then I would have thought that maybe Dundee or Rocky Johnson would have walked over there and said, "Okay, man, step out of the ring." They didn't do anything. So we standing there, this Mark, is getting into the ring, and David started to go, and I said, "Wait a minute, David." Well, he pushed me aside. He hit that guy with that belt, and the part caught him right in the head. I've seen a lot of blood, but I thought he'd murdered the guy. I mean, he was bleeding like a faucet. Blood all over the ring. And finally, the police got in there then and took him out. And I'm thinking, oh, we're all going to get sued now if the guy don't die. And he didn't die. And the next week we went back up there, nothing. Guy didn't sue David, didn't sue me, didn't sue the promotion, didn't sue anybody. That was in the days where people weren't so crazy. But, David, he hit that guy, wow, hard. It actually surprised me. I thought David would have hit him or tackled him, but he just hit him with the belt. Well, anyway, we were lucky there. David was lucky on that one.
I think Dr. D goes to Memphis in like 1985. This was pretty much shortly before he was pretty much blackballed or he retired from the business or however you want to put it. And there's an interview he does, and it's like, Jesus Christ, I can't believe he said that. And it's against Jerry Lawler. I can't remember who his tag partner is. And he's wearing some like basically neo-Nazi T-shirt. And he basically says to Jerry Lawler, "You got a disease, boy, and they call it AIDS." And it's like, gee, it's Saturday morning, 11 a.m.
He didn't care. He did not care. Oh, I've been around him a lot of time when he punched fans. But David kind of added to the conflict. We was in some dressing room one night, and David said, "Dutch, come here. I went, "What? See that guy?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm going to get him." I said, "Why?" "Well, he keeps mouthing off. He keeps walking by and mouthing off." And I'm thinking, David, please, don't do that. And I told him, I said, "Leave him alone, you know." So finally I'm there, and David calls him back there like, "Hey, come here a minute. Come here." And the guy went, "I'm not coming back there." "No, come here. I want to ask you something. Come here." Kept on. And the guy finally got down there. David yanked him in there and beat the living crap out of him right in front of me. And I'm going, "David, stop. And then he threw the guy out. Then the guy went and got the police, and we could see him. He was telling the police, "That guy right there, you know, his nose was bleeding, his eye was cut." Said he did it. And the cop was looking at him like, "Well, why'd you go back there?" And we never heard any more about that. Now, if you did that today, you'd be arrested, you'd be sued, you'd have to go to court and everything else. I'll tell another story about a fight. I didn't have it in the ring. Another guy had it in the ring, and I got sued because of the other guy beating the fan up.
Oh, really?
And I was a good guy. I was a babyface.
So you're guilty by association. Oh, right. So you weren't even a tag partner with him then?
No, I was in a tag match, and some mark come in, and they beat the crap out of him, threw him out. And then it came back that the promotion got sued, the promoter got sued, the heels got sued, and I got sued. I don't know what I had to do with it. I didn't have nothing to do with it.
Was it Raka Khan, by any chance, just suing everybody on Earth for $3 billion?
No. I think you kind of like her, Raka Khan.
It's too tall for me.
Well, I would like to see him just beat the crap out of you. I'd love to see that.
I might like it as well. I don't know.
You might.
I think we've got time for a couple more questions if you're game, Dutch.
Okay,
right. I've got one last page with 3. I'll ask the first 2. If we've got time, we'll ask a third as well because it's a video one. Steve Marco, I would love to hear your old stories with Black Bart.
Well, the best story I have with Black Bart is I was in mid-Atlantic territory when Dusty was the booker. And he has this brilliant idea that he wants to put me and Black Bart and Randy Colley together as the Desperados. Have you ever seen this?
Do you know, we've discussed the Desperados on this very podcast before. It's actually quite well acted.
Well,
you threw yourself into the role, Dutch.
I did. Well, I enjoyed doing it. But it's 3 bumbling cowboys who were like stupid. And we were on a conquest to meet up with Stan Hansen. That was like the major thing to do. And I used to say, listen, guys, we're sitting in the same dressing room with Stan Hansen every night. So why can't we meet him? But he's right there. Why don't they bring a camera in here and us meet him? And people used to say, "Hey, Black Bart's in there. Stan Hansen's in there. He's in there with you guys." Which what I'm saying is it didn't make any sense to like house shows. And finally, I don't know what happened, but I think they wanted Stan Hansen to actually do a vignette with us. And he says, "Nah, I'm not interested." And then he got up and he just walked out. He didn't give a notice or nothing. He was just gone. So we ran off the guy that we were trying to meet. And Black Bart, he'd say, "Dad, gummit." He was really a fun guy and really a good worker. And the last time I heard about Black Bart, I think he's a little bit sick now.
I think he's very sick now. I believe he's announced he had stage 4 cancer.
Well, he was sick before. And I remember when we left, and I left Mid-Atlantic, is because they had this idea. They wanted just to ship me to Florida because they wanted to start another territory down there. Mm-hmm. Like the original office went out of business and they took it over and they wanted to call it Charlotte South. Mm-hmm. I went, why would you go to Tampa or Miami or Jacksonville, in those towns, and call it Charlotte South? I mean, you're not going to draw any Charlotte people down to Florida, but you are going to draw Florida people. So why don't you call it something Florida? So when I heard that, I said, no. And then I kind of gave my notice and I left going there too, because I said, listen, guys, I don't mind going, but what am I going to make? And they could never come up with a figure. Well, we can't really guarantee you. I said, well, I can't guarantee I'm going to be there either. So I left.
How come Black Bart was always like a regional hit? I don't really remember him doing anything in any of the major promotions.
He's from Texas. So he worked basically in Texas and Oklahoma and probably just through the South. Because I had a chance one time to go to Oregon, which Kevin Sullivan was a good friend, and he called me and said, you need to come up here. And I said, he said, oh, you'd love it up here, blah, blah, blah. So then I got a map out and I got to looking. That's how you know I'm from down south. I got to looking. Then I looked how far it was. I said, nah, I don't think I need to do that Oregon trail wagon stuff. That's too far to go. Because if it was even Detroit, I never went to Detroit. I never went up north to work because I never liked cold weather. I like to say south where I was familiar with everything and people talked like me and I could get along with them. But I didn't like the cold weather. And Bart was the same way. He wanted to stay down south and he did. So what is wrong with Bart, did you say?
I think he's got stage 4 cancer.
Good guy. Good guy.
We will ask the one more question and then we will shut down this podcast. Soy Boy asks, have you ever seen the video where Koko B Ware beats the crap out of a jobber? It was in Memphis TV circa 1985. What was that all about? So, do you know the video I refer to? I
was there.
Should we watch the video and then comment on it, or what would you like?
Yeah, let's watch it.
Okay, then 1 second. Okay, so we're back. That was actually quite a painless one for us there. It's a lot easier on StreamYard, but StreamYard's got its own problems. Right, we're going to watch this video of Koko B Ware beating a jobber up on Memphis TV circa 1985. Give us some, for the audio listeners especially, give us some running commentary. It's only 1:42, so at least it's a quick beating.
Well, I was there that day, and I think there's some animosity from Koko's side, and as you can tell, and I think it started because the guy was kind of a smart mouth, and he was around the Memphis area, and he had done some independent shows, and I think he had been.
There you go. We got one chopping.
Yeah, he was. He'd been running his mouth, and Koko didn't like him, and I think Lawler didn't like him, and I think Lawler had more to do with this than Koko, because I think Lawler kind of set this up, and Koko went out there, and he beats the crap out of this guy. I mean, it didn't go about a minute, and then it was over. And then run it to end. If you'll watch Koko after he pins him, he reaches down and slaps him.
Yeah. There you go. I think he's punched him good hard 20 times in the face, a good few kicks. He's now running on his back.
Oh, yeah. He beat this guy up without hitting him in the face. Now, watch this move. And damn one, he didn't break his neck here. You got to watch this. Ooh.
It's a great finish of the Brain Buster. I love the Brain Buster, and it's just like no one ever does it, or rarely does it now. There you go.
Watch the slap. Watch the slap. Did we see it?
Yeah, he just did it. I'll rewind it. Hang on. There you go. During the pin. 1, 2, slap. 3.
Oh yeah, slap. Boom. Yeah.
It looks like it actually looks like he woke him up with the slap. If you look at his head pop up, 1, 2, 1, 2, boing, and he's down again.
Well, he went in the dressing room, and everybody. He looked at Lawler, and Lawler nodded his head, and I guess he did a good job. But
really,
and the guy didn't say anything about it back in the dressing room. So if the guy's not going to say anything, I guess it just all slides through.
Now, Lawler has a habit, apparently, because I spoke with Steve Kern recently, and in his book, The Chronicles of Steve Kern, I think so. Where is it? I've actually got it here. I've lost it. Anyway, he's got a book out, Steve Kern, search for it. And he says that Lawler once offered him $1,000 to break Chick Donovan's leg in a match because I believe Chick Donovan had been eyeing up one of the ladies that Lawler was interested in. And apparently that was sufficient enough to pay $1,000 to have a leg broken. Is that the full story, or tell us the story again?
I do remember the story that was circulating back then. Of course, when I hear it, I'm hearing it at least third hand or fourth hand. I never went to Steve and I said, "Did Lawler ask you to break Chick's leg?" And I don't know how Chick Donovan didn't hear it. There was only like 14 of us there. So somebody told him. But yeah, I think it's true. I really do think it's true. But Steve, they were making big money. I don't know what $1,000 would do. And I don't think if he needed the money, I don't think he'd have done that either. Because that's really cold to go in there. And nothing's worse is when you go into a ring with another guy, it's an unwritten allegiance between two guys that, listen, I'm going to work, you work, don't hurt me, and I won't hurt you. See, it's like a doctor's oath, do no harm. Is that if somebody's not expecting it, what kind of an asshole does it make me that if you're expecting a working punch and all of a sudden you get a straight shot in the nose and the mouth? And I've gotten something like that. And I said, okay. But usually when that happens, the guy said, I'm sorry. I've even had guys, all right, get me back. Mm. But I would never hit them back if they said, I'm sorry, because it was a mistake. So now I'm asking for more trouble if I punch the guy and it's maybe a little harder than what he hit me. He said, oh, wait a minute, I didn't hit you that hard. No, but if you do that on purpose, you become an asshole. And I think if Steve had done something to Chick, I don't think that would have set well with Steve. And it didn't set well with me either. But hey, I got through 30 years in the wrestling business by staying in my own lane and not involving myself into things that that I'm not involved in. So I just stayed away from it.
Well, Steve Keirn didn't go through with it for the reasons that you said. It's the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. How many times did Lawler take hits out on other wrestlers? Or is this the only one that you heard of?
That's the only one I heard of. But there is a story going around, and Jimmy Hart, it happened to Jimmy Hart. Mm-hmm. And Jimmy Hart denies it now, but he's still doing business with Lawler, so he's going to downplay it. But Lawler broke his leg playing football, and then Jimmy Hart went out on TV, and Lawler is watching live Memphis TV from his house, which is about 5 miles away from the TV studio, I guess. Memphis not that big. But and Jimmy went out there, and he says, well, he's dumping Lawler. And he says, hey, when a horse breaks their leg or something like that, hey, you shoot horses, don't you? So what he was saying was he's dumping Lawler. Lawler never forgot it. So when they came back and had the first, it started an angle with one of Hart's guys, Lawler broke Jimmy Hart's jaw. And saying, if somebody asked me, and I would tell Lawler this, Lawler is an artist. So he is very, very infinite with punches, because he threw great punches. But he never tagged me on one, never. So to break a guy's jaw, you got to be throwing it with that intent, I would think. And he broke his jaw. Lawler denies it. Jimmy Hart denies it. And I love Jimmy, and I hate he got his jaw broke. But the only thing, and I've said this to around a lot of people, I don't know if Lawler ever heard it. He's going to hear it now. But I think Lawler intended to do some damage. I don't know if he intended to break the jaw. But, it's hard to break somebody's jaw in a street fight. And Jimmy just held just right there for him. Pow, and he got him. That's an old story, but I think Jerry was making a statement.
Quite the statement. I'll add this very briefly. He has admitted on camera that he intentionally broke Paul Heyman's jaw when they booked a load of scaffold matches involving Heyman. And then come the day, Heyman says, I'm not going up there, I'm scared of heights. So the next time that Lawler got Heyman somewhere around ringside, he just snuck up and broke his jaw as well.
Well, Paul agreed to do the scaffold matches. Was that what it was?
Apparently, he never brought up any objections until the day of.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've had a few of those scaffold matches in Memphis and around. The scaffolds get intrinsically in worse shape the farther the week goes on. Like Memphis, they had a good one. They set the scaffolding up for it, and they run the deal across. That was okay. At least it was set up professionally. And then you go to Louisville, and it was just 2 ladders, like high ladders. And it wasn't very high, but it was, you could fall. Evansville, it wasn't even that. I mean, it was like, I don't know, you took 2 drunk construction workers, painters, and they had those little 6-foot ladders, and they set it on that. But it's actually, it's not that far of a fall, but you could get hurt on it. So I never liked the scaffold matches. I did have one with Bill Dundee in the Mid-South Coliseum in Memphis. It was high, or it is high for me. I hate heights. I hate it. But Dundee loves it. He got up, he was dancing on the scaffold, and I went, you son of a bitch. you're going to dance and you're going to make me fall off. And of course, I had to lose the thing, so I'm having to do the drop. Hey, have you ever seen Cornette do the drop in Atlanta?
Yes, he slips through Big Bubba's arms, doesn't he?
I don't even know if they even tried to catch him. They were close, and he comes down and he does the hyper bend or a hyper vent or
he sits down
hyperextend.
Like, he sits down like really, really quickly, and like, you know how Jimmy's got a high voice anyway. His voice was almost like only like dogs could hear him at some point because he just kept going, ah, ah, you know, when he falls. I feel so bad for him. I think he was back at work after 2 weeks though.
Well, that was a bad bump, and he got hurt pretty bad on that one. So, and that was in the Omni. I remember it was in the Omni, and that was with I think that was with Crockett. Yeah,
that was it was Starcade, I think.
May have been, but I was there that night. I remember he got hurt. They carried him back in the dressing room.
And the old story of Dusty saying they're gonna, you know, Bubba's gonna be under you and they're gonna catch you like the girls at the football game, baby. And anyway, that was all well and good in theory.
Well, I wish Dusty could have seen this. Then he would have said, if you can't do the shit, don't plan the shit or something. If you can't do it, don't do it. That was a big deal with Dusty when he was at the Performance Center. Mm-hmm. And they needed somebody like Dusty because he knew what the business was really like. And I think he taught interview class, which is what he should have taught. And he'd pull them in there and he'd have them do interviews. The thing about the Performance Center that I don't think anybody knows, they have a camera that works 24 hours a day. So you can go in there and you go into this little booth and you can cut your promos just for you and take the tape or take the video out and take it home with you and study it. And you can have a lot to say or nothing to say. But for any of the starting wrestlers out there, where I would say the best time to do an interview is when you're driving by yourself to a show. So some of my best interviews was done probably at 1 o'clock in the morning when I'm driving on some back lane, 2-lane highway somewhere to God knows where, to 3 left turns from hell back in the hills of Louisiana or the swamps of Louisiana. And I wish I could have saved some of them, but I didn't tape them and I just did them. I said, damn, that was a good interview. And when you put me in front of a camera, it didn't come out. So, but that's the best way to relax. Because like I said, Bob Holly, we put him out there for 3 minutes and we just watched him die for 3 minutes. And he didn't realize that till later. Then he got pissed off. I'm glad he didn't have a gun.
Or an inhaler. We are going to shut down this podcast. Thank you so much, Dutch. We've got books, as we said. We'll just do the plugs one more time, please. We want to get to 100 5-star reviews on iTunes if you can, if you've got the time, or if you just want to help us out. That'd be very nice of you. Other than that, thank you very much, Dutch. We the people, and we will see you.
Just for my information.
Yes.
To find this on YouTube, which is where it is right now, what you just put the what's that called? The whoop. How do you find it? Just put it in the Storytime with Dutch?
Oh, our podcast.
To search for it on YouTube.
If you put in Dutch Mantell into Google, it will bring up the YouTube channel immediately. It will bring up all the podcasts immediately. Now, your name is now synonymous with this show now. So if you just put Dutch Mantell with 2 L's, by the way, then you can't miss it now.
So, and guys, when you go on there, please subscribe. We're trying to get to 100,000 subscribers.
Yeah, you want
correct?
the award, don't you? You want the award, the little silver award on the wall. I've got one there already. Hang on, there.
You told me about that. So where is the award? You showed it to me, didn't you?
Hang on, right. So I've got 2 cameras. Can you see the silver thing with the play button there?
Yeah, but it's kind of blurry now.
Yeah. Well, So I'll have to send you a photo.
Oh,
Anyway, the point is,
now.
you weren't interested until I told you it had like a monetary value, and then all of a sudden you were really interested in it.
Oh, yeah. Well, anytime there's a monetary value attached to anything, yes. So, okay. Any more appearances for Kenny Bolin?
Yeah, we booked him for 3 years from now. Is that right?
Yeah. But that was a fun show with him. Even me saying, shut the hell up, Kenny. But I enjoyed it. I really did.
No, and I hope everyone at home or wherever you listen to it enjoyed it as well. Normal business has been resumed.
Okay, I do have Damien Sandow lined up.
Yep.
Coming on. Hopefully next week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get in contact with him today. And he said anytime. He's probably in L.A. But so 10:30 for me is like 7:30 for him.
You're 3 hours ahead? So, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to do a different time for that then, aren't we? Because it's 10:30 for you, 3:30 for me, which is when we start this.
Mm-hmm. And I have Jamie Dundee scheduled. You've had him before.
No.
Yeah.
Right. So he's scheduled then. Have you spoke to him?
Yeah. He wants to do the show.
All right.
And I have, I want, do you know who Mike Mooningham is?
No. Or is he a journalist?
He's a journalist.
Right.
But he's been doing wrestling he did wrestling before the dirt sheets. He was a sports columnist in Charleston, South Carolina. So he went through the glory years of Mid-Atlantic and a Flair and a Valentine and Wahoo and Steamboat and the Rock and Roll and the Andersons, and it goes on and on and on and on. And I think he would be a very good guest for us. And I think the people would enjoy him.
Definitely. I know we've been promising Jimmy Hart for a while. But
Jimmy Hart, I got to get back.
Yeah.
Well, you got to catch him. He's like the elusive thief. You got to catch him at a certain time. Oh, no kidding. And he's there, and then he's not there. So, and Jimmy Hart, we got him in the queue. Mm-hmm. That's what you use in the UK, right?
Oh, yeah.
In the queue, in the line. We got him in the queue. We don't know when. But Damien Sandow, hopefully next week.
What about Bradshaw? I know, normally we talk about this off air, but we might as well talk about it on air. But what about Bradshaw? Do you think he'd do it?
Well, I don't know what else he's doing, but yeah, he'd do it.
We've got to have Bradshaw on. You know, you two and all the old war stories, especially from the mid-90s.
Oh, he'd do it.
Yeah. We'll have to get Bradshaw on as well.
All right, we'll get him. I'll contact him today.
There you go then. Right, so...
Hey, wait a minute. Why don't the fans write us and give us the top 3 list?
I know who the top 1 is. Do you know who it is, don't you? It's Jim Cornette. Everyone wants Jimmy.
I think he's mad at me.
I don't think he's going to do it. Because, I mean, especially now that Kenny Bolin's just been on.
No, he won't do it. He will not do it. But he does owe me a podcast because I did his one day. Oh, it's like 3 or 4 years ago. Hmm. But, hey, how many subscribers does he have?
On YouTube, over 300,000 something.
See, I helped him get there.
Mm.
But, Jimmy is like Jeff Jarrett. They only call you, and I love Jimmy and I love Jeff, but they only call you when they want something from you. Mm-hmm. If you want something from them, you can leave a message. They ain't calling you back. I don't know why that is.
I've struggled to get Jeff on my show. I never managed it, but Jeff would do it. I mean, I can get in contact with Jeff and ask. Well,
you got to get him on the phone first.
Mm.
You got to make contact with him.
But I told you this, he did a show on his podcast all about you, like a few months ago, I think. Yeah. So,
I know.
Maybe we could.
Dutchisms.
Dutchisms, the entire TNA run, you saving his life in his very first Memphis appearance, I think, as a 16-year-old, and you carried him like a babe in arms to the back with shampoo in your hair. And
did he talk about our match at the Smithsonian Institute?
Yes, he did. He talked about that. He talked about a lot of TNA stuff, though, because you don't remember anything about TNA. It's like it's like a traumatic event in your life that you've blacked out.
Yeah, I've just separated my body and my mind from that TNA time. Yeah. I enjoyed it. And I was an agent there, but most of the time, if you wanted me, I was in catering.
We need to do like
drinking coffee.
We need to like hypnotize you and like regress you to a past life so you can remember TNA.
And I remember my times there with the Jeff Hardy he came one day to do a show and he's supposed to do a run in. We couldn't find him. He wasn't in the draft. He was outside in a car. Well, you know what he was doing. And he was 10 minutes late from a run in, but I finally got him there and he ran in from the other side of the arena. And by that time, people were so glad to see anything except the beatdown. They popped big. So when we go back, you never see that 10-minute wait on the tape. It was like right on time. We just edited it and went right in with it.
Anyway, I did. We did a podcast called like maybe 6-8 weeks ago. I called it "The Trouble with TNA Part 1." We've got to do The Trouble with TNA Part 2. I've already got, I swear down, 5 podcasts worth of questions for you. So we're going to have to get to TNA at some point. You're just going to have to, book the therapy afterwards.
Well, how much do the people even remember TNA? A lot? A lot of people?
Well, I don't know. I mean, people watched it every week. I mean, the audience was rather steady, wasn't it?
What, the viewers?
Yeah. It was like 1.5 million a week or whatever it was for years. It seemed to never change.
That's what it was. Except when I started the knockouts.
Yes.
Then the knockouts. And the highest rated segment on that show, and I don't want to take credit for it, but I'm going to take credit for it, was Awesome Kong versus Gail Kim main event. They did a 3.4, like 3.44 or whatever. If it hit a 3.5, they'd give us a 3.6 rating. And that was the highest other than Hulk Hogan being his first appearance on TNA. I don't know what it did, but I don't think it beat that 3.5 very much.
I don't think the segment did really well. And I remember that with Hogan and Bischoff debuting, and then they went head-to-head with Monday Night Raw, and then they managed to kill their own business. How to kill your own business in 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's where I got to saying, to have a war, one side has to know that a war is going on. WWE didn't even know there was a war going on.
Hang on. Now, the first week, I think this was the first week they did. Do you know what Raw booked, or WWE booked, to go head-to-head with that first live TNA? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure this is right. They booked Bret Hart's return in the... no, I'm sorry, not Bret Hart's return in the ring. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels reconciling on that first Raw. And it obliterated TNA.
They may have booked Beavis the Clown versus Butthole the Janitor, and would have probably beat TNA. I don't know.
We can book them for guests. We can book them for guests for the podcast as well. We might get good ratings.
This is a weird business we're in. Otherwise, this podcast would never go, and you can't run out of things to talk about. It's always something. It's always a concept. It's always an idea. And even the people at home, they have ideas. So, and apparently they like to talk wrestling, and that's what we're here for.
Absolutely. And as I said before, the questions I've got for this podcast, I've got it all in a Microsoft Word document. At last count, it was over 60 pages of copy and paste questions from email and everything else. So we've got questions for years. So, but I'll always try and ask some of the new ones first.
So what if you send me all those questions so I can send it back to you, and I would just like, I don't remember that. I don't remember that. I don't remember this. What if it's just all of just a blank?
And
you can ask one question. You can ask one question. So
okay, I'll tell you what. I'll send you the file, and you can have a look through. But you'll be disappointed when you see how many there are. But for now, thank you very much, everybody, for watching and listening, and however you consume this show, and we the people, Dutch.
We the people. See you next week.